The escalating narrative surrounding the cast of Wicked is not the product of superstition, coincidence, or behind-the-scenes instability. It is the predictable outcome of a cultural ecosystem that has grown increasingly hostile toward women who exist under sustained public scrutiny. What has been labeled a curse is in reality the collision of intense visibility, unrealistic expectations, and an internet culture that has normalized invasive commentary under the guise of concern. Ariana Grande, Cynthia Erivo, and Michelle Yeoh have become focal points not because of failure or controversy, but because their bodies, composure, and endurance are being treated as public assets, subject to constant evaluation. The initial wave of attention did not center on performance, artistry, or the film itself. Instead, it immediately locked onto appearance. Red carpet images were dissected frame by frame, with perceived weight loss becoming the dominant talking point. What followed was not a thoughtful discussion of health or wellness, but a speculative spiral fueled by social media, tabloids, and algorithmic amplification. The discourse adopted the language of worry while deploying the tone of ridicule. Accusations and jokes about weight loss drugs such as Ozempic proliferated, reducing complex human beings to symbols in a culture war over thinness. The framing was contradictory and revealing. The same voices claiming alarm over extreme thinness simultaneously engaged in mockery, proving that the concern was never purely about health. This behavior reflects a broader contradiction in modern celebrity culture. Beauty standards may fluctuate, but the pressure on women to conform remains constant and unforgiving. Female celebrities are expected to appear effortlessly balanced, healthy but not changing, vulnerable but never struggling, disciplined but never strained. Any deviation is interpreted as evidence of decline. The scrutiny surrounding Wicked did not emerge organically. It was engineered by a feedback loop in which visibility invites commentary. Commentary breeds speculation, and speculation is rewarded with attention. Once that loop begins, the subject no longer controls the narrative. Ariana Grande's experience during the press tour illustrates how quickly this scrutiny translates into physical and emotional strain. The expectations placed on her were not merely professional. She was expected to embody stability while carrying the weight of a massive franchise, a demanding promotional schedule, and a public that has long projected its anxieties onto her body. When she appeared visibly overwhelmed at the New York premiere, that moment was not met with empathy. It became content. Her later COVID diagnosis, which forced her to cancel appearances including a scheduled stop on The Kelly Clarkson Show, was framed not as a health necessity but as further evidence of fragility. The underlying implication was clear: illness is acceptable only when it does not interrupt consumption. This environment leaves little room for recovery. Press tours are designed to extract maximum visibility in minimal time, and the emotional labor required is rarely acknowledged. The expectation that performers remain polished under exhaustion is treated as baseline professionalism, even when the physical cost is obvious. Grande's brief withdrawal from public appearances was not an act of retreat, but a necessity. Yet necessity is rarely respected in a system that values output over well-being. Cynthia Erivo's involvement in this narrative exposes another dimension of the pressure. When footage surfaced from a Singapore event showing her stepping in front of Ariana Grande during a chaotic moment, the internet immediately framed it as drama. Speculation erupted before context was established. Erivo's subsequent explanation was striking in its simplicity. She did not describe conflict, fear, or tension. She described instinct. She saw a situation escalate and moved to protect her friend. The language she used was unembellished and deliberate. Safety mattered more than spectacle. That explanation dismantled the idea that the cast was fractured or unstable. Instead, it revealed a bond forged under shared pressure. Erivo's response denied the internet what it often seeks most: emotional excess. There was no performance of heroism or victimhood, only a clear boundary drawn in a moment of chaos. The fact that such an ordinary act of care became headline material says less about the incident itself and more about the hunger for narratives of conflict. Michelle Yeoh's inclusion in the so-called curse narrative demonstrates how indiscriminate the scrutiny has become. As an Oscar-winning veteran with decades of experience, she represents stability and achievement, yet even she was not spared the invasive commentary. Her naturally slim figure became a point of fixation, with online discussions oscillating between feigned concern and outright cruelty. The pretense of worry could not conceal the underlying judgment. This was not about health, it was about control. It was about reinforcing the idea that women's bodies are perpetually open for public debate. The irony is stark. While the internet scrutinized her appearance, Yo continued to conduct herself with composure, professionalism and warmth. When she casually shared a detail about her personal life, her extensive collection of Labubu figures, it offered a brief glimpse into a private source of joy. That detail resonated precisely because it contrasted so sharply with the surrounding hostility. It was a reminder that even under relentless observation, individuals retain inner worlds that cannot be fully consumed or defined by public opinion. What is being labeled a curse is better understood as the cumulative effect of sustained judgment. Each woman is navigating not only her role in a major production, but also the weight of expectation attached to her identity. Grande carries the legacy of a pop career shaped by intense scrutiny. Erivo navigates the intersection of talent, representation and visibility. Yo stands as a symbol of longevity in an industry that often discards women once they age out of narrow ideals. The pressure does not manifest uniformly, but its presence is constant. The media's role in this process cannot be ignored. Headlines that frame concern as mystery or danger amplify anxiety rather than address it. The language of curses and collapse attracts clicks precisely because it externalizes responsibility. It suggests that something inexplicable is happening, rather than acknowledging the systemic forces at work. By framing the situation as a narrative anomaly, the media absolves itself of complicity. Social media intensifies this effect by collapsing distance between observer and subject. Commentary that would once have been confined to private conversations is now broadcast at scale, often without accountability. Algorithms reward outrage and speculation, ensuring that the most extreme interpretations rise to the top. In this environment, even acts of care, such as Erivo's protective instinct, are recontextualized as evidence of instability. The impact of this pressure is cumulative. It does not require a single catastrophic event to leave a mark. Instead, it erodes resilience through repetition. Constant judgment conditions individuals to anticipate scrutiny, to brace for interpretation, and to perform self-awareness, even in moments of exhaustion. The cost is not always visible, but it is real. What makes this moment particularly troubling is its timing. Wicked represents a major cultural milestone, a project that has been anticipated for years and carries immense symbolic weight. Instead of allowing the cast to inhabit that achievement, the conversation has been redirected toward their bodies and perceived vulnerabilities. This shift diminishes the work itself and reinforces the idea that women's value remains tethered to appearance, regardless of accomplishment. There is no credible evidence of dysfunction behind the scenes. There is no indication that the production is unraveling or that the cast is at odds. What exists instead is a pattern of interpretation driven by external anxiety. The women involved have responded not with spectacle, but with restraint. They have continued to show up, to fulfill obligations when able, and to protect one another when necessary. The real danger of the curse narrative lies in its normalization. When exhaustion, illness, and solidarity are reframed as omens, it discourages transparency. It teaches public figures that vulnerability will be punished with speculation rather than met with understanding. Over time, this dynamic incentivizes silence and performance over honesty. The situation surrounding Wicked is not an isolated case. It is a reflection of a broader cultural pattern in which women are expected to absorb pressure without visible consequence. When consequence appears, whether in the form of illness, fatigue, or emotional strain, it is treated as failure rather than evidence of an unreasonable system. If there is a lasting impact to consider, it is not on the film's success or the cast's reputations. It is on the precedent being reinforced. As long as appearance remains the dominant lens through which women's professional moments are interpreted, the cycle will repeat. Each high-profile project will generate its own version of the same narrative, repackaged as mystery or concern. The truth is less dramatic and more uncomfortable. There is no curse haunting Wicked. There is only a culture that has yet to reconcile its appetite for access with its responsibility to allow human beings to exist without constant evaluation. Until that imbalance is addressed, the pressure placed on women in the spotlight will continue to masquerade as intrigue, and resilience will continue to be mistaken for something ominous.